The wind sobbed across the high plains, dragging veils of snow like tattered lace over the ridges and sagebrush. It was a cruel wind born of the mountains and sharpened by loneliness, and it scraped against the old Boone place, as though trying to peel the years from its bones. Wood creaked, nails groaned, but the man inside moved only when the stove hissed low, and even then it was with the grudging stiffness of someone who had forgotten what it meant to be warm. Elias Boone sat hunched by the fire in a high-backed chair that had belonged to his father. A rough wool blanket clung to his shoulders, his broad frame weathered by 39 winters and the kind of work that turned muscle to stone. The cuffs of his shirt were frayed, but neatly mended. His hands, scarred and calloused, rested open on his knees, motionless. Outside, the land howled. Inside, silence hung thick as chimney soot. He hadn't spoken to a soul in 7 days. That was fine. Words had only ever brought trouble. Through the cabin's single window, framed in frost, he watched the storm deepen. Snow fell in thick, slanted sheets. Somewhere far off, a coyote barked once and fell silent. Elias stood, bones creaking louder than the floorboards, and crossed the room to bar the door. As he slid the thick beam into place, a memory rose unwanted. Anna humming in the kitchen, flower on her cheek, asking him to leave the door unlatched because she liked the way the wind sounded through the trees. She'd been gone 17 winters. He shut the thought out like a cold draft. He turned to bank the fire when something broke the storm's voice. A knock. He froze. It came again, soft, almost unsure, but there. No one came out this far. The closest neighbor was 10 miles south and meaner than the frost. Elias crossed the room in 3 long strides, pulled a rifle from the wall, and pressed his eye to the peephole carved near the doorframe. A woman stood there. Snow swirled around her like ghosts of the old world. She wasn't from town, that much was certain. Her long black hair clung wet to her face, and her arms were crossed tightly over her chest, hugging what looked like a shredded shawl. Her legs were bare below the knees, red with cold. No boots, no gloves, just a figure carved from suffering. "I'm freezing," she rasped. Her voice was thin, muffled through the thick door. "Let me in. I beg you. I'll repay you." Elias stared, heart thudding like distant hooves. Apache by the look of her. Maybe 20, maybe younger. There'd been whispers of bands moving north through the valleys, pushed by soldiers and hunger. Folks in Dry Creek grumbled about raids. Theft. One rancher swore they'd lost cattle. She knocked again, weaker. "Please." He should have turned her away without a word. Should have left her to the mercy of the land like the lawmen in town would have. She wasn't his problem. Not his tribe. Not his kin. Not his burden. He opened the door 2 inches. Wind punched through the gap, snow and grit stinging his face. Her eyes met his, deep, dark, and wide with desperation. She didn't flinch at the rifle he held loose in one hand. Didn't cry. Didn't plead again. "I ain't running no refuge," he said, voice gravel with disuse. "Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it here." Her lips trembled. "I'm only looking to live." He glanced down and noticed she was cradling something beneath her shawl. Not a weapon, no. Her hand curled protectively. He narrowed his eyes. "You carry in?" She hesitated. Then, with a painful breath, she pulled aside the cloth just enough to reveal the round of her belly, faint but unmistakable. Elias swore under his breath. She was with child. "I can work," she said quickly. "Clean. Chop. I can pay you back. Just one night. Just warmth." He tightened his grip on the rifle. The storm hissed between them like a living thing. The smell of cold sweat and cedar drifted between gusts. "You from the band near White Mesa?" he asked flatly. Her eyes flicked downward. "No band. No tribe. Just me now." That, more than anything, twisted something behind his ribs. A squall roared over the ridge. She staggered a little and dropped to her knees. The snow clung to her hair, her lashes, her shoulders. She blinked against the sting, head bowed. A whisper escaped her lips, nearly lost the wind. "If not for me, then for the child." Elias took 1 step back. Just one. Then he shut the door. The latch thudded into place. He stood with his back against it, breath ragged, It had been too long since he'd heard a voice not wrapped in venom or price. Too long since someone asked for help without deceit or demand. And yet, fear had answered for him. Fear carved by stories, by wounds old and inherited. She could be bait, could be lying, could be anything, could be dying. He tossed another log onto the fire. Sparks hissed. He poured a mug of weak coffee from the kettle, took a sip, and burned his tongue. Minutes passed. He told himself he didn't hear the coughing, didn't hear the fall of something soft into snow, didn't imagine the silence that followed. He stirred the coals, sat down again. The chair creaked under him like a guilty thing. A low, keening wind pressed against the windows, insistent. The flames danced, but they cast no warmth in his bones. He wrapped the blanket tighter, closed his eyes. But even then, behind his lids, he saw her, bare-kneed in the snow, hair like raven wings, breath blooming in the dark like a last prayer. Outside, the night crept colder. Inside, Elias Boone sat unmoving, until at last his eyes opened, slowly, as though waking from a dream, and locked on the door with a kind of quiet dread, because the world was silent again. Too silent. The storm had passed, but the cold lingered like a curse over the plains, seeping into the earth and curling around the cabin walls. Dawn crept in pale and cautious, laying a weak light across the frostbitten window pane. Elias Boone sat in his chair, staring into the embers of the fire. His boots were laced, his coat draped across his knees. He hadn't slept. Not really. Not since the knock. When the sun crested low over the ridge, he rose. The floorboards groaned under his weight as he crossed the door, rifle in hand, more out of habit than necessity. He hesitated at the latch, fingers flexing once, then drew the bar back. The wind bit his face the instant the door opened. The world outside glittered, cruel in its beauty. Snow lay deep on the steps, piled high along the edges where the storm had swept it. And there, half buried in a drift, was her. The Apache woman lay slumped sideways, hair spread like ink across the white. One arm clutched her belly, as though shielding the life within even as her own failed her. Her skin was a terrible shade of gray, lips cracked and blue. For a long, paralyzing breath, Elias thought she was already gone. Then her chest lifted, barely. A thread of air ghosted from her nose. "Damn it all," he muttered. The rifle clattered against the doorframe as he dropped it. His boots crunched over the snow. He crouched, hesitated, then slid his arms under her, startled at how little she weighed. Lifting her felt like cradling a bundle of sticks and rags. She gave a faint, broken sound, a whimper or a sigh, and her head lolled against his shoulder. Inside, the cabin was still warm. He set her gently on the narrow cot against the far wall, pulling the blanket up around her shoulders. Her hair was wet through, strands sticking to her face like blackened vines. Her breathing came shallow, uneven. "You're a damn fool, Boone," he muttered to himself, fumbling with the kettle. A damn fool for opening that door, and a bigger one for waiting till now. The fire had burned low. He tossed on kindling, coaxing the flames until they flared. Then he fetched a rag and dabbed at the ice clinging to her lashes and hair. She stirred faintly, murmuring in a tongue he didn't know. "Easy," he said, unsure why he spoke at all. "You're safe now." When the broth was ready, he sat on the edge of the cot and eased a spoonful to her lips. She swallowed weakly, coughed once, and opened her eyes. They were dark as river stone, but not empty. There was still a spark there, faint, stubborn. "You," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "Could have left me." "Could have." He looked away. Didn't. A ghost of a smile touched her mouth, so fleeting it could have been imagined. She tried to sit up, but fell back with a hiss of pain. "Don't move," he said. "You need rest. That child needs rest." Her hand went to her belly. "You saved us." He didn't answer. Outside, the wind shifted, bringing with it the distant echo of hooves. He stiffened but dismissed it. Probably a deer crossing the lower fields. No one came this way unless they had cause, and most folks had no cause. For 3 days, the storm's memory clung to the cabin. Elias kept to himself, tending the fire, fetching water, watching the snow slide heavy from the roof. The woman Naeli, she'd said her name was, spoke little. She slept often, ate what he offered, and watched her with eyes that seemed to see more than he wished. On the fourth morning, he woke to the sound of fabric tearing. She was at the table, mending one of his shirts. "You're supposed to be resting," he said, voice gruff with sleep. She didn't look up. "Hands need work, or they forget how." He poured himself coffee, the silence between them broken only by the crackle of the fire. "You said you'd repay me," he said finally. She nodded once. "I will." He wanted to scoff, but didn't. There was a steadiness to her tone that made him think she wasn't talking about chores or coin. That afternoon, he rode into Dry Creek for supplies. Heads turned as he tethered his horse outside the general store. A man near the hitching post spat in the snow. "Boone," he called. "Here you're keeping company with an Apache squaw." Elias didn't pause. Inside the store, the air felt tighter than usual. Jed Rawlins leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes hard. "You know what folks are saying, Boone?" Jed said, "They're saying you're bringing trouble out to your land." "Folks say plenty. Her kind ain't to be trusted. Apache'll smile at you one minute, slit your throat the next." Elias set his coffee tin and flour on the counter. "You done?" Jed smirked. "Your land, your grave." On the ride home, the sky brooded low, heavy with unshed snow. The wind cut sharper than before, and Elias found himself gripping the reins tighter than the cold required. Naeli was waiting on the porch when he returned, wrapped in the blanket he'd left her. "Why'd you come out?" he asked. "Too long alone inside. You'll catch your death." She smiled faintly. "I've already met death. He turned me back once." He wanted to ask what she meant, but didn't. He led the horse into the barn and worked in silence, though his mind churned louder than the wind outside. That night, as the firelight flickered over the walls, Elias caught her humming softly. A lullaby, perhaps, though he couldn't make out the words. He watched her fingers trace slow, absent circles over her belly. "You saved 2 lives," she said quietly. "That's a debt I won't forget." Elias turned his gaze to flames. His voice was low when he spoke, almost lost in the crackle of the wood. "Maybe it's me who owes you." Naeli's eyes lifted to his, unreadable. The silence that settled between them was different this time, less like a wall, more like a fragile bridge. And somewhere outside, faint and far, came the echo of voices carried on the cold night air. The air that evening was thick with the scent of pine smoke and something Elias Boone couldn't name, an edge of trouble carried on the cold. The sky had bruised itself purple by the time he spotted the dust clouds rising on the far ridge. Riders. 6, maybe 7. Too many for neighbors, too purposeful to be passing through. He'd known it was coming. The moment he'd brought Naeli inside, he'd felt the stirrings of the town's judgment. Men like Jed Rawlins didn't let such things lie. "They're coming, aren't they?" Naeli's voice was steady, though her fingers gripped the edge of the chair. "Stay inside," Elias said. "Out of sight." She didn't move. "They won't stop if you tell them to. They'll listen." He slung his rifle over his shoulder and pulled on his coat. The leather creaked with emotion, old but still sound. He glanced at her belly where her hand rested. "If they don't, I'll make them." Outside, the snow crunched sharp beneath his boots. He stepped off the porch, shoulders squared, as the riders drew closer. Faces emerged from the shadows of their hats. Jed Rawlins at the front, with the same smirk he'd worn in the store, and behind him, grim-eyed men clutching rifles. "Evening, Boone," Jed called, reining in just short of the yard. "Heard you've been harboring trouble." Elias planted his feet. "You rode out here for gossip?" Jed leaned on his saddle horn. "Don't play dumb. Apache woman, right here in your cabin. You know what her people V done. Cattle gone missing, raids down south. You think she's different? She's not a raider. She's a woman carrying a child. She's a threat." Jed's tone hardened. "Step aside, Boone. We'll handle it." Elias thumbed the latch on his rifle. The sound was soft but cut through the wind. "You want her, you'll have to shoot through me first." A murmur rippled among the riders. One man shifted uneasily in his saddle. "Elias," Jed said, his voice low now, coaxing, "you don't owe her nothing. Let her go and this ends clean. I owe her everything, Elias said. More than you know. Behind him, the door creaked open. Naeli stepped onto the porch, blanket drawn around her shoulders, dark hair loose in the firelight spilling from the cabin. Her eyes met Jed's, unflinching. Your fight isn't with this man, she said softly. If you're set on blood, take mine and leave him be. Don't, Elias hissed over his shoulder. Jed's smirk faltered. You speak good English for a savage. I learned from a missionary before he was burned alive for trespassing on our land, she said. But I'm not here to fight you. I'm here because I've lost everything. Words won't save you, Jed growled. Maybe not, but mercy might save you. For a moment, silence settled like falling snow. Then a boy at the edge of the group nudged his horse forward. He was no older than 16, freckles dusting his cheeks, hands trembling on the reins. I know her, he said. 2 winters back, I got caught in a snare near White Mesa. My leg was bleeding bad. She's the one who found me. She could have left me. She didn't. She carried me back to camp. Shut up, Tommy, Jed snapped, but the words had cracked something. The riders exchanged uneasy glances. One man muttered, You sure she's the enemy, Jed? Sound like she saved the boy's life. She's Apache, Jed barked. That's enemy enough. Elias raised his rifle higher, his voice cutting like steel. You're not touching her. Not today. Not ever. You're on my land now, Jed Rawlins. Ride off or you'll answer for it. Jed's lip curled. For a moment Elias thought he'd draw, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Jed spat into the snow. Your land. Your mistake. He wheeled his horse. Let's go. The riders turned, one by one, hoofs pounding back across the frozen field. Soon they were nothing but shadows melting into the dusk. Elias exhaled slowly. The rifle sagged in his arms. You should have stayed inside, he said without turning. I've hidden enough in my life, Naeli murmured. He looked at her then, really looked, at the faint swell beneath the blanket, at the exhaustion etched in her face, at the quiet strength in her eyes. You're going to get me killed, he said. You've already saved me, she replied. Maybe this time I'll save you. He wanted to argue, but found he couldn't. Later, as the fire crackled and shadows danced on the walls, Elias sat across from her at the table. He watched her fingers move in slow, absent circles over her belly as she hummed a soft tune to the child within. I can't promise they won't come back, he said. Then we'll face them when they do. Elias studied her in the flicker of the firelight, a strange warmth rising in his chest. It wasn't comfort, not yet, but it was the memory of it, the shape of what might be. You repaid me tonight, he said quietly. She shook her head. Not yet. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the shutters like a warning. But in the cabin, the air felt steadier somehow, as if a fragile piece had been hammered out in the heat of the fire. And as Elias closed his eyes, he didn't see Anna's ghost for the first time in 17 winters. Instead, he saw Naeli, dark hair, strong hands, eyes bright with life, standing unyielding against the snow.